Welcome back to The Green Machine, the nature aquarium specialists. This video documents professional aquascaper and founder of The Green Machine, James Findley, replanting a 3 metre long, 1,200 litre aquarium. You can see more videos like this on The Green Machine's YouTube channel or on their website at www.thegreenmachineonline.com. James will be using the ADA substrate system. He starts by adding the substrate additives. James points out that these substrate additives are not essential, but he chooses to use them in his display pieces and showrooms because he feels that it is important for the displays to be perfect and to last for a long period of time. For this unusual display piece, James will be creating an Iwagumi aquascape of epic proportions. James has chosen to use Mantin stone for this aquascape. He will also be using Storagine repens, Echinodorus tenellus, Hydrocotyle tripartia, Japan, and some Ricardia comedifolia, a small but beautiful liverwort. James has called this aquascape Reciprocity because each end of the aquascape mirrors the other in a reciprocal relationship. In this aquascape, James wanted to recreate a larger version of his earlier aquascape, Tributary, but in a simple and elegant Iwagumi style, with minimal plants that will showcase the Mantin stone. James will be creating 2 triangular layouts, one at either end of the aquarium, that, when taken together, will create a U-shape aquarium layout. In this way, each end of the aquarium could be a layout in its own right, but looks equally beautiful when viewed as a whole aquascape. You can read more on nature aquarium layout techniques at www.thegreenmachineonline.com, where you will find a whole library of free aquascaping resources. James places the substrate materials in the areas he intends to plant in. The middle part of the aquarium will have a sand pathway that will not be planted, so this area does not need to have any substrate materials and is left bare. A good quality, effective substrate system is vital in the nature aquarium. This is because healthy, thriving plants are essential to create a balanced natural ecosystem. The plants oxygenate the water, making the environment habitable for fish and shrimp. A good substrate system will provide all the nutrients needed by the plants, whilst also creating an environment that encourages and promotes the colonization of beneficial bacteria within the aquarium. These beneficial bacteria break down toxic waste substances, turning them into harmless nutrients that can be absorbed by the plants. In order to create these conditions, it is important that the substrate does not become compacted. Unfortunately, many substrates that are marketed as being for planted tanks are not ideal, and some are, in James's experience, not suitable at all. If you want a beautiful planted tank, invest in a good quality substrate from a specialist nature aquarium retailer who can advise you. All specialist retailers should have nature aquarium displays in store, so you can see the quality of their products and knowledge for yourself. James adds the final substrate additives to the aquarium. These additives are specifically formulated to create an ideal environment for beneficial bacteria, which will make for improved filtration, clearer water, better water conditions, and a more healthy, longer-lasting nature aquarium. Here you can see the specialist power sand used to prevent compaction of the substrate. This is particularly vital in this aquascape because James will be banking up the substrate to a very high level. Here you can see the final mixture of substrate additives. Now James adds more aquasoil substrate. In this layout, James will be creating one of his signature styles by banking up the substrate very high at the diagonally opposed corners of the aquarium. This creates a unique and original nature aquarium style that was made possible by James's development of substrate supports, which you will see later. Aquariums of this size are rare, and nature aquariums of this size are even rarer. In fact, the Green Machine's 3 display tanks are the largest nature aquarium displays in the UK, and possibly even beyond the UK. Planting tanks of this size naturally presents many challenges, but fortunately James is well practiced in this art, as he has been rescaping these aquariums and many others since 2007, when he founded the Green Machine to bring the nature aquarium to the UK. James uses a movable scaffold to allow access to the aquarium. As this display will be viewable from all sides, James must plant it with a 360-degree view in mind, so it will look beautiful from every angle. For these large nature aquariums, patience is not just a virtue, it is essential. Just completing the substrate in this display is a mammoth task, let alone the hardscape and planting. But as you can see here, from nature's chaos, James's earlier rescape, it is well worth the effort. James continues to build up height in the substrate. This is an essential concept of the layout, to create an invisible line running conversely across the tank from corner to corner. This will create an invisible feeling of flow, drawing the 2 sides and tying them together as 2 parts of the whole, creating a feeling of natural reciprocity and balance within the layout. Here, James checks the balance of heights before deciding to add even more substrate to create significant height to enhance the effect of the 2 sides running down to the middle. James describes how this creates a stronger feeling of flow from the high ground to the low ground, and how he wants to experiment with his signature style and push it to its limits. Now James is ready to select the hardscape. James has chosen to use Manton stone, an iconic stone in the aquascaping world. James believes that this stone is incredibly beautiful, containing natural yellows, purples, blues and greens, and having very interesting natural facets. Like all stones, the colours cannot be seen properly until the stone is placed underwater. This is a vital stage in any nature aquarium layout, as the hardscape creates the structure or skeleton of the layout. But it is particularly important in an uwagumi layout, where the minimalism of a layout makes the hardscape even more crucial. James considers each stone from every angle. The same stone can be used in almost infinitely different ways, so it is important to appreciate every angle before making a final decision. James lays out a large section of Manton stone on the floor, from extra large to small pieces. James points out that whilst not all of these stones will be used, it's important for him to have a good choice of hardscape, because he does not pre-plan these layouts. He explains that he always dreams about his nature aquarium layouts for weeks before he does them, but he never puts pen to paper as most aquascapers do. He just gets a feel for the layout and constructs it on the day. James adds that it is important for him to be flexible, as he sees it as a creative process that needs freedom. Although he appreciates that this is not the usual aquascaping method, and many people achieve excellent results by pre-planning and drawing the aquascapes first. Here you can see how important the placement of the initial stone is. In an iwagumi layout, this stone is known as the master stone or father stone. It is the anchor of the point for the aquascape, and all other stones will take their lead from this master stone. This stone is the point which will first draw the eye into the aquascape. This is such a vital step that James stands back to observe and direct an exact placement. James stands back to observe the placement. Next, James places the master stone for the other end of the layout. Then, James stands back to check the balance between the two master stones, ensuring that the placements create one feeling of flow and reciprocity that he desires, as though the two corners are connected by a diagonal line. Now James places the second stone, or mother stone. This stone has an important relationship to the master stone. It must enhance the look of the master stone without distracting from it. This is a fine balance to achieve. This second stone should be a little smaller and less dominant than the master stone, but still beautiful. Once again, James directs the vital placement of the second stone to ensure it is exactly as he envisages it. James double-checks the best angle for this second stone using the Green Machine's custom-built aquascaping layout table. This table gives customers the chance to set up their hardscape in store and photograph it so that they can easily reconstruct it at home. The Green Machine have the largest selection of aquatic hardscape in the UK, and their experts are always on hand to advise and assist. If you would like James to create your hardscape layout for you, or to advise and assist you, please book an appointment in advance. Here you can see James's impromptu aquascaping style at work as he decides against his initial choice and replaces it with another stone from the selection he laid out earlier. This stone is smaller and more manageable, so James places it himself to allow more control over the final positioning. Now the other stones are added in a way that starts to create a natural flow down to the mid and lower parts of the tank. Now you can start to see the balance forming within the layout. Note that for an iwagumi it is best to work with an odd number of stones in each grouping, as this creates a more natural effect. Nevertheless, when the grouping contains 8 or more stones, then this becomes less important. James now adds the smaller, more decorative pieces of stone to the scape. These stones will be less visible in the final layout. They will merely be glimpsed through the plants, but they are an important addition because they add a natural complexity and direction to the layout. Leaving small gaps between the stones allows you to plant in between them. James finds that this helps to create a feeling of great age within the aquarium, as though the plants have grown in over a long period of time. James now completes the other end of the aquarium layout. The main stone has already been added, as it is needed to be placed in the layout in order to obtain the overall balance and framework. James then adds the second stone, or mother stone, and then proceeds to place the remaining stones. As explained earlier, each end of this aquarium essentially contains an iwagumi layout that looks beautiful in its own right, but James has also been careful to ensure that both ends work together as one whole. Here you can see the delicate and unique structure of the mantin stone, especially if you're watching this video in full high definition. Notice how James continually stands back to check the overall balance of the layout, as well as the balance of each grouping. It is vital that both ends of this layout work together to create a feeling of balance and reciprocity. When creating this signature style of James's, in which the corners of the substrate are banked up so highly, it is essential to support the substrate sufficiently. Otherwise, when the water is added to the aquarium, the substrate will simply roll down into the middle of the tank and the layout will be destroyed. James uses the Green Machine's substrate supports, which he developed for this very purpose, so they work particularly well. When using these substrate supports, place the stones into position first, and then inset the supports into any precarious areas. The supports act like small dams and should be placed in any areas that look like they may collapse when the water is added. You can use stones to support the substrate, but James has found that stones are more difficult to work with because they take up a much larger area and are therefore more restricting. He explains that he would not be able to create this aquascape using stones as the supports. In addition to that, they allow for the planting in larger areas and allow plants to grow better. All in all, they allow for more creativity to be used and better plant growth. They are also more economical choice than stones. You can find the Green Machine's full range of extensive aquascaping tools, as well as a whole library of very useful tips and techniques at www.thegreenmachineonline.com. James then pours some aquasoil powder over the substrate. This adds more height to the aquascape. James chose to use the powder type because he prefers the aesthetic look of the smaller granules and finds it easier to plant into because it has a greater suction type effect on the roots of the plantlets. It is also ideal for carpeting plants and grasses as it allows their roots to grip the granules of the powder more easily, which increases the survival and initial growth rate of the plants, making for a more successful nature aquarium. James uses a paintbrush to smooth the substrate and to ensure that the area where he will place the cosmetic sand is free from substrate. Next, James pours the sand into place without using any dividers. He finds that it is sometimes easier to start it in this way, as long as you have a steady hand and a good eye. James has chosen a light-coloured sand so that it will lift the aquascape, adding an element of brightness to the layout. This is because the light colour of the sand reflects a high level of light. James then places some substrate supports between the sand and the substrate, as this will prevent the plants from creeping into the sandy area. Here you can see Nature's Chaos still looking beautiful. You can see the video of the making of Nature's Chaos on the Green Machine's YouTube channel. James has chosen to use Storagine repens, and here you can see how some plantlets were prepared from cuttings taken from Nature's Chaos, although even more were needed. James chose Storagine repens because he wanted a carpeting plant to create a high impact in the aquarium. He adds that Hemianthus cuba would perhaps be the most obvious choice. He knows from his aquascaping experience that cuba can tend to lift up after some time because it has shallow roots. In smaller aquariums, this is not really a problem. But James knows from previous experience, particularly from his work entitled Fallen Tree, which was done in this very aquarium, that in large tanks like this, cuba can be very difficult to maintain. James chose Storagine repens because it has deeper roots and will not lift. James adds some water to the aquarium to make it easier to plant into the substrate, and uses good quality aquascaping pin sets. If you want a beautiful planted aquarium, it is essential to use good quality plants from a reputable specialist retailer. Do not opt for a mixed bag of plants, because this will not allow you to use the artistic license and creativity required to create a beautiful nature aquarium. Good quality rooted plants are worth investing in. Poor quality plants with small roots do not have a good survival rate. This will cost you more money in the long run, and it will lead to frustration and disappointment. Here you can see how the powder type of substrate allows for easier planting, as it has greater suction effect on the plantlets. With the addition of green plants, the nature aquarium finally begins to come alive. When planting in this way, in a minimal style, using many of the same plant, patience is required, particularly in an aquarium this large. But stick with it, as it will be well worth it in the end. A beautiful carpet of Storagine repens extending into the distance has very high impact. As you can see, the correct plant preparation is vital. There are different methods of preparation for different types of plants, and it is essential to get the right technique. To see some videos on plant preparation techniques, look at the Green Machine's YouTube channel or visit their website. For these cuttings of Storagine repens, the bottom leaves are carefully removed and the plantlet stem is then placed into the substrate. Roots will develop from where the leaves have been removed. Some potted specimens of Storagine repens were also used later in this aquascape. Here is an example of a good quality potted specimen of Storagine repens. Notice the bright green colour of the leaves and healthy roots. There are no worrying signs on this plant, such as dead leaves, blackened stems or decaying portions of the plant. Filling a large aquarium like this is a slow process, so James instructs his assistant to begin filling it. A dish is placed inside the aquarium to prevent the water from disturbing the layout. Here you can see the planting process sped up to lightning speed. Now James plants the Echinodorus vesuvius. James chose this plant for its beautiful leaf shape and because he wanted to create some height in the aquarium, but did not want the plant to grow all the way to the top of the tank. When choosing your plants, it is important to bear in mind how they grow. Otherwise, your maintenance will be fighting against the natural growth of the plants rather than working with it. Echinodorus vesuvius sends runners off that can be trimmed off and easily replanted. The surface of the water is skimmed with a wet and dry vacuum to take off any surface debris. Next, James plants Hydrocotyle tripartica Japan. He explains that the Hydrocotyle species work well when planted in between stones, as they form a stunning cascade and create a wild forest-like appearance. James describes how Hydrocotyle tripartica Japan is probably the smallest of the Hydrocotyle species and will carpet very densely. He adds this dense carpeting effect that can be accentuated by pressing flatly down on the plant during weekly maintenance. James adds that this plant is quite difficult to separate into recognisable rooted pieces for planting, but do not worry, because this species roots from the stem. Pieces can just be pressed into the substrate and they will grow in readily. Then James plants Echinodorus tenellus, which he likes to use as a transitional plant between the shorter stem plants and carpeting plants and grasses, and the taller species in the background. James uses this plant near the edges of the stones to feather and soften them, creating a more natural look. You can read more about working with carpeting plants and grasses at www.thegreenmachineonline.com. Notice how the green of the plants really complements the purple in the Manton stone. James checks that the progression of the plants from the low to the high areas of the tank is to his satisfaction, bearing in mind how the plants will naturally grow in. Then he decides to add some more Storagine repens to increase the planting density. James prepares some potted specimens of Storagine repens for planting. A good pair of aquascaping pincets is essential to avoid damaging the plants. Here you can see where James has placed some Riccardia comedifolia, which is a stunning small liverwort that works very well in nano aquariums because it has a unique small growth pattern. James pushes the mesh onto the stone by bending it into shape. Once the moss has grown onto the stone, the mesh can be removed and placed onto another area of stone to grow more. Riccardia comedifolia is a very slow growing plant, but once it is established, it creates beautiful cushions of greenery that are well worth waiting for. Here you can see the directional theme of the layout and the reciprocal relationship between the two ends of the scape. Now the aquascape has grown, it has really come to life. The carpet of Storagine repens creates a lush green richness without distracting from the impact of the stones. Notice how the smaller stones used are barely visible underneath the plants, but add an element of natural complexity to the layout, whilst the light sands add an almost dream-like brightness that draws the eye in. Most importantly, notice how the two ends of the layout work beautifully together to create a calming feeling of balance and reciprocation. The health and vitality of the plants are a testament to James's talent as an aquascaper and the skills of the maintenance team at the Green Machine. The bubbles of oxygen rising up from them show their health and vitality. James used a custom CO2 kit by the Green Machine, 2 metal halide lights and a specialist fertiliser to create the optimum conditions for plant growth. The healthy plants also demonstrate the quality of the substrate system used. In a nature aquarium, the fish are the finishing touch. They add movement, colour and diversity to the aquascape. James chose to add purple harlequins, a mixture of rasboras and some other small fish. James uses small fish in his nature aquariums as this increases the sense of scale and adds to the overall impact of the layout. As you can see, the nature aquarium is the perfect environment for fish, as it is the closest to nature, and fish in these aquariums rarely need to be medicated. For more information or to view more videos like this, please visit www.thegreenmachineonline.com and subscribe to The Green Machine's YouTube channel. You can also find The Green Machine on Facebook and Twitter.